There is a great deal of pressure on Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers as they have high expectations heading into the season. Now, when thinking about the ways that he could get better as an individual in a way that helps the Sixers team, I have one thing in mind, and it depends on the defensive side of the ball. I want to dive into the recent votings from ESPN, who did an article talking about Defensive Player of the Year, present Joel Embiid with a challenge, and dig back on some old quotes that may indicate his mind might be in the right place on that. So to start off with what specifically sparked this video here, and we did get some voting from ESPN across their speculation for each of the NBA awards, and for Defensive Player of the Year, they had Victor Wembanyama at number 1, would not be a surprise there. Rudy Gobert, number 2, who has quite a decorated list of Defensive Player of the Year already. Bam Adebayo at 3, Anthony Davis at 4, Mikal Bridges at 5, Drew Holiday at 6, and then Joel Embiid down there at 7. And that is where my brain went, is could Joel Embiid contend for Defensive Player of the Year this year? Now, I wanted to dig back and take a little bit of a look into what he said about the topic, but to set the table completely here, we've seen Joel Embiid get better year in and year out. That constantly he's adding things to his game, whether it be that mid-range shot, his growth as a playmaker last year that we did see. But when we're really thinking about what this team could use, I think it is to lock in on that defensive side of the floor. To take a look at their defensive rating on a year-by-year basis with the Sixers, we do want to pull this up here, that just last year they were 11th as a team in defensive rating, 8th the season prior, and 11th the season prior before that. Then to look a little bit back deeper, a year where they were 3rd, a year they were 8th, 3rd in his first full season at the NBA level. That is more what I want to see from the Sixers as a team. Joel Embiid will absolutely be the guy spearheading that. And Defensive Player of the Year is a goal that he has spoken pretty openly in the past. When he first came into the NBA, he spoke about that being a goal that he wanted to be the most dominant defensive player in the entire league. And then, lo and behold, he ended up being one of the most dominant scorers, arguably of all time in that conversation. If he had played the minimum amount of games, last year would have been his 3rd consecutive season leading the league in scoring. And that is where I want things to scale back this year. That you do have other options. That, yes, we know what Joel Embiid is capable of. That he is a guy who averaged 34.7 points per game, a ridiculous total last year, along with those 11 rebounds and 5.6 assists. But now there's other options on the Sixers team. You can lean on a guy like Paul George, who will now be your 3rd running mate with the 22.6 points per game that he provides. Tyrese Maxey ready to take another step forward after his 25.9 point per game performance last year and the 6.2 assists that he did produce per game, which is a significant step forward for him. So for Joel, for this team to fully function, I would like you to lock in on the defensive side of the floor. And as I mentioned, he has been open about this, that I did want to dig back into this quote here. This coming back in the 2020-21 season, and it's written that Philadelphia 76ers center Joel Embiid said Friday that he's deserving of the NBA Defensive Player of the Year before. Embiid explained during an appearance on the Low Post podcast that he doesn't want his strong play offensively to overshadow his defense, which matters more to him. Quote, I want to be Defensive Player of the Year. I should be Defensive Player of the Year, Embiid said, before adding that Sixers teammate Ben Simmons is also worthy. Quote, he's been a monster defensively all season. I do think he should win it. He has an impact on the court, especially every single night guarding the opposing team's player. I'm not fighting about it. Now, to put the context here, this was at the point in time when there was a little bit of Rudy Gobert versus Ben Simmons debate for that Defensive Player of the Year. Ben ultimately came in second. And by the way, Ben was a defensive monster for a period of time. It is really, at this point, just disappointing how his career has panned out. That I think even this Celtics championship, seeing things play out, how Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were the pieces that did not quite fit together or had two overlapping skill sets that people were concerned. To see them finally get over the hump, there was a little bit of me that was like, that should have been Joel and Ben figuring out together. Now, ultimately, we see who Ben Simmons has turned out to be as a player and really as a person as far as the drive and not having the mentality and being built for it. But it's just kind of disappointing to take a step back to what he once was and seeing what he is right now, which is a pretty bleak future of his NBA career. So at the point of that quote from Joel, he was kind of sticking up for his guy, but he's doubled down on that subject. That he did also join the Draymond Green podcast, and this article writes that Philadelphia 76ers star appeared on the latest episode of the Draymond Green Show to discuss the current MVP race, among other topics. While the championship remains the ultimate goal for Embiid, the 28-year-old has also set his sights on winning multiple MVP and Defensive Player of the Year awards. Quote, winning a championship matters to me a lot. So if I were to win MVP, then win a championship, even better. But then again, you know we all have egos, Embiid told Green. You want to win a bunch of Defensive Player of the Year awards in your career, just like you want to win a bunch of MVPs and Defensive Player of the Year in my career. At some point, it would be cool to do both, especially at the same time. And that is really where I bring this challenge to Joel Embiid. we know there's a ton of talent on this roster outside of himself that is no longer needs to play Embiid basketball where it's him having the ball for 15 seconds of every shot clock. You can lean on these other guys. That to take a look at this roster here, there's a ton of players who can impact winning, even beyond the Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. That Jared McCain is a guy I expect to be in the mix. Reggie Jackson can get hot for a night here and there. Kelly Oubre is absolutely going to have his nights where he matters in the scoring department. Caleb Martin will be a key part of this Sixers team. Eric Gordon will be splashing from deep. There's a lot of talent to lean on. So for Joel, if you can be that ringleader of this defensive side of the floor, I truly think that would be the best case scenario for the Sixers team. And let's not act like he cannot do it. That we've seen Joel Embiid when he flips that switch and when he is locked in onto that side of the floor, I truly believe in the top 5 of best defenders in the entire NBA. And yes, I mean that, and not just big man, perimeter-oriented players as well. What I think Joel is uniquely equipped to do is he can switch out on the perimeter and stick with guards for stretches of time. No, he's not, he's not Bam Adebayo at it, who's particularly excellent at that. And I think he certainly regressed a little bit throughout his career. I think early on he was particularly good at that, where he could really switch on to guards and hold his own. But I do think there's some scheme issues that need to be adjusted within the Sixers team. They lean on drop coverage with Joel constantly. And yes, he's most comfortable in that. Yes, he wants to be a rim protector at best case scenario. That's kind of his calling card and once he wants to do the most. But let's play a little more switch. Let's allow Joel Embiid to shine on this side of the floor, and everyone else will follow. When your best player is committed on that end, it is infectious to a team. And I do think Joel can be the ringleader to make that happen. So with the rest of this roster in fold, with a team that is truly built to contend for a championship, there's no better way than the MVP, the ringleader, the guy who is the franchise cornerstone to be setting the tone than being that defensive tone setter. I know that he's capable, and once again, we've seen those flashes from him. That think about the moments like him skying and blocking John Moran at the rim, or the chase down block against the Celtics. There's a ton of high moments from him on that defensive side of the ball, but I want to see him on an every night basis. For Joel Embiid, when kind of picturing what his ideal stat line is, and once again, to pull up what we saw last year, pretty ridiculous off the chart stuff. I'm ready to see him take a step back in the scoring department. That rebounding number is something that I would like to increase. Maybe he finishes up somewhere in the department of 26 points per game, 13 rebounds. Those assist numbers can grow, and I think he can get over 2 blocks per game this season. 1.7 blocks and 1.2 steals is still pretty absurd stuff, but I think there's another level that he can take this to, both from a statistical standpoint, and really what I'll more be focused on is the team stats that are coming with it, the defensive rating. I think that Joel, if he's locked in, even a team like the Timberwolves, which is probably would be my pick to lead it as far as across the league wide, I think he will be capable of elevating the Sixers team right in that same mix there, but it starts with his commitment on that end. So to Joel, I challenge you to take this offseason as a hard look in the mirror. We've been complaining for years about the lack of talent around you. It's now here. Now it is not on Joel to figure out how his game can best translate towards winning basketball, and I think that best way might be for him to develop into a defensive player of the year candidate in the way he's very well capable of. So let me know if you guys are on the same page as me. Could you see it? Do you think there's a chance that Joel could be a defensive player of the year type guy? I know it's going to be stiff competition, that the NBA is going to be itching to give awards to Victor Wembanyama. Most improved, I saw who's voted the most likely for, tied with Jalen Williams as well, and I certainly could see that, although I would argue that it kind of loses the importance of most improved, as Wemby was a number 1 overall pick and looked very good last year, so not exactly who I think that award should be for, but I do think Defensive Player of the Year is a realistic conversation, and he certainly was in the mix last year. With Rudy Gobert, I think that time has came and went. I think everybody has woken up to there's kind of a little bit of a difference here for a guy who statistically is off the charts and all the advanced analytics scream how talented he is, but there's lineups where you straight up can't have him on the floor in the playoffs. And while Rudy, I think, broke that stigma to an extent last year, that I think he was more impactful than I've seen at any other point in his career, the biggest memory that we have of him is Luka Doncic hitting a step back right over top of him for a game winner there. So I do think that the Rudy Gobert Defensive Player of the Year campaign is officially in the rear view. He's got plenty of decorated, he's got the trophies on the case already, so he's certainly not hurting for that. But I think it's Joel Embiid's time to step up and be that ringleader of the Sixers team. And I think everyone will be at the better for it. So let me know if you guys are on the same page as me. Could you see a Joel Embiid Defensive Player of the Year award this year? Let me hear from you in the comments. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button and dropping a like below. And I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.